Tack. Good morning, London. How are you doing, guys? Here from Milano, we are 20 degrees centigrade. It's beautiful. Eccovi là, bellissimi. Hi, London. Where are you guys? Lots of people over there. Evviva Brunello. Buonasera, my name is Filippo Bartolotta. We have a lot of the room is full here in Milano. And it's not because I'm a sex symbol, but because we have Brunello di Montalcino, which is always drawing a lot of people in. What are we going to be doing today? We have 6 different wines. We are going to go into a journey that is both a journey into the different regions of Montalcino. I'll tell you all about it in a few minutes. But it's also a journey into the world of Riserve. For many people, Riserve... there's like some music coming up. For many people, Riserve, people that don't like, there's always haters out there, right? The haters of Riserve, what are they saying? Let's get rid of the elephant in the room. They're saying, the Brunellos that are not sold, they turn it into a Riserve, and then they sell it to a higher price. That's what people that don't like the idea of Riserve. But actually, the wines that we have here in front of us were designed to be Riserve, were conceived to be Riserve. So they are born with the idea to be having a bigger structure and a longer aging potential. Before we're going to be serving the wines, I've got mine here just to make sure that the wines were in good conditions. I would like to take you for a journey into Montalcino. How do you reach Montalcino? First of all, from Milano, it will be 3.5 hours, 4 hours drive, maybe a little less. It's 1.5 from Florence. Well, if I'm driving, it's going to be more an hour and 10 minutes, just because I do that on a weekly basis. And then from Rome instead, so Florence is here, Montalcino is here, Rome is going to be 2.5 hours drive. Montalcino is a place that to me looks like an oasis. It feels like so this is Montalcino, all right? I know you have some better pictures, but if you stay with me in this beautiful blue quaderno, what you have, this Montalcino is like a square. Here you have the Ombrone River. On this side, you have the Orcia River, south, and then you have Asso and Arbia. When I say river, actually, I overdone it because it's more like streams. They're not river, okay? Like you could walk on these rivers in summertime, they're all dry. But the Orcia that goes straight into the sea is going to be bringing lots of sea breeze into the area. 3,500 hectares, okay? And it's like an oasis because if you go here, on the north and west side, you have forest, like trees. It's like beautiful forest. If you go on the southern end, you have the Monte Amiata and the Crete Senesi, where nothing can grow but the beauty of white truffles. And then when you go up here, you have the Via Cassia that will take you all the way to another direction, and nothing else, once again, can grow. So it's like an oasis, a little quadrato. If you want, you can look at Montalcino as a reverse ice cream cone. Okay, so un cono, questo l'ho fatto, è così. Here is Montalcino, 600 meters above the sea level, okay? At the bottom of this ice cream, make believe that you have chocolate and vanilla. The chocolate would be the clay on the northern slopes, the vanilla could be the sand on the southern slopes. Montalcino is 600 meters above the sea level. You've seen that's Monte Amiata, and it's always, always windy. That is a paramount factor for fine winemaking. Even in summertime, if you were to go like this, in the evening or early in the morning, it is cold. That's what you see right now, like a totally well-preserved landscape. A few years ago, Montalcino was given a World UNESCO Heritage Site. If you go read why, it's written because the landscape that inspired all the painters of the Renaissance time has still remained intact. What does it mean? Basically, it means that Montalcino is exactly the same. It's been like that for over 600 years. As a matter of fact, Tuscany as a whole, when you go to the Tuscan countryside, some of the Tuscan homes that you see over there, all the way up to 1985, didn't have any running water, no electricity. Why 1985 things changed? Because there was a mini glaciation. I don't know those that were there, but overnight rivers froze, like if we were in Amsterdam, okay? Most olive trees collapsed, died. When I remember sleeping in a country home, and I have my glass of water next to my bed, the morning after, it was ice. It was so cold that as of that year, everybody started to have central heating and running water. Most of these winemakers, when they got to Montalcino in the 50s and 60s, they found Tuscany like Leonardo da Vinci found it. Literally, like nothing has changed. If you drive from Montalcino all the way down to Sant'Antimo, nothing changed. Yeah, well, there is more vineyards than there used to be, quite possibly. There is the asphalt roads, but if you get rid of the asphalt roads and the light poles, you are back 500 years ago. What does it have to do with the wine? Well, the fact that, for instance, in Montalcino, 50% of the area is actually forest. Lots of biodiversity. It's not just about the vines. But what happened in Montalcino is unique. I can tell you, not because we're here today for the Brunello, that Brunello di Montalcino is Italy's strongest collective brand. What am I trying to say? I'm not saying that it's the best wine, but I'm saying that it's a very strong collective brand. Anyone, whether we are in the wine trade or not, people recognize in Brunello something that is reliable. Why is that? Because these guys believed in the project and they were united. Although people in Montalcino are very stubborn people, sono durissimi gli abitanti di Montalcino. In Montalcino, you know, there is a church, almost like in Catania. There's a church every 20 meters. It's a place that has not been easy to live, okay? That's when I said it's an oasis. In this oasis, they managed to create this incredible terroir. What are the key features of the terroir? I started off with human beings. The Biondi Santi family, Clementi Biondi Santi, started off this project in a way that they wanted everyone to be involved. These people were agronomists, they were scientists, they were poets, they were warriors, soldiers that fought for the Risorgimento Italiano. Incredible people that wanted to get Montalcino to be a different spot in the world. So what did they do? While everyone else in Tuscany was using Sangiovese, the king of the Tuscan varieties, Italy's most planted variety, God knows why, because it's really tough to grow, early budding variety, late ripener. What does it mean? That you are under the sky for so many days and I was going to say shit can happen, but you know, like you have a long time where a lot of bad things can happen. So why Sangiovese? Somebody says because it's very productive, maybe. There is no color in Sangiovese. Sangiovese, when we're going to drive through this tasting, you've got to see a wine where you're going to be able to read newspaper through it. When you get a glass of Brunello di Montalcino, you want to be able to read something underneath it. You see? If it's transparent, clear and bright, then it's Sangiovese from Montalcino. So Biondi Santi wanted to make something with pure Sangiovese while everyone else was using other stuff, like Cannaiolo, Colorino, Ciliegiolo, even white varieties like Malvasia and Trebbiano. Paradoxically, a small percentage of white varieties in red blends, that is true all over the world, by the way, help red wines to fix color. But Biondi Santi said, no, I want to make a wine that has to be 100% Sangiovese. It has to age for 5 years in the cellar, and I want to make this wine into a collectible item. So, lower production. What Biondi Santi used to do in the 1865, so when Italy was about to be unified, okay, is something that still today some winemakers don't. There's some appellations where still have got 180 tons per hectare. In Montalcino is 75, but nobody's gonna reach that peak. A lot of the wines that we have here today will be 60, 50, 45, somebody's 30 tons per hectare. Now, that's not always a choice. Very often, the land is so poor that you cannot ask for more, all right? But Biondi Santi wanted to produce something, creating a product where you were gonna bring from one plant, potentially, you can have 25 kilograms. Mio nonno era felicissimo quando tornava a casa con questi grappoloni, 25 kilograms from one plant. Or, to make a bottle, you get 1 kilogram. So that's what Biondi Santi started to work on. The idea of producing something that is small production, that can age, that cannot be, is not just for immediate consumption, like most Tuscan wines were, but collectible item. What else can I tell you? Let me take you more into the geology, geography, and the key assets of these appellations. Allora, dove siamo? We are quite south. It's very dry because the Monte Amiata, once again, let me take my Montalcino. So, today we talk about quadranti. Okay, Montalcino apparently, we talk about zones and areas. So if you have Montalcino, right, as you do right here, okay, a little bit above the center, what we've got is this, northern east clay. The northern east part of Montalcino is the oldest. Montalcino is a bit of a summary of geological history of Tuscany. You have everything. You have the Eocene clay, 140 million years ago on the northern east side. Result, wines that tend to be a little bit more austere when young, maybe some more floral profile, maybe a little bit more aging potential. Southwest, the sea, 40 kilometers away from there. So the Orcia River is going to channel up wind coming from the sea. And as a result, the wines, I'm not going to say they're going to be saltier and with more sea breeze, but they do have more Mediterranean generosity. Okay? Then we move on to the southeast, where the Monte Amiata is. And there you have some sandier kind of soil, readier to drink wine, more generous, more supple and seductive. And then on the northern east, we have once again a little bit of more of that clay that we found on the northern west. But something else that we need to keep in mind when we talk about soil is altitude. So from the 200 meters above the sea level, more or less, you have mostly sand all over, sand and clay, of course. And then as you go up, you start having a little bit of more rocky soil. And what happens to the millions and millions of years ago clay throughout the millions of years? Compacting the clay, it would result into the presence, I don't have anything that is similar, but an iPhone. Imagine a soil that is composed of a lot of iPhone, the schisty soil of Galestro. You grab one of these from the ground and you do like that and you just crush it. The roots of Sangiovese have to go through this rocky soil to look for water. It's not water on surface. You cannot irrigate anything at all. So only the good site can actually give you good wine. And as a result, so you have like sand, rock here, and all the way up here where you find more of this schisty kind of soil. So it's not just about the different position that we need to put into the equation, is also the altitude. Altitude also will contribute into wines that tend to be a little bit more austere, with more acidity, and today is where a lot of winemakers want to buy. Everyone is trying to buy the higher sites of Montalcino. Last but not least, another couple of things. The fact that in Montalcino, a lot of winemakers blend grapes that come from different areas. So it's not that easy to talk about northwest, southeast, south ovest, etc. South ovest, ho fatto una crasi tra l'inglese e l'italiano. Signore, parlavo troppo forte in inglese, forse? Where are we going to get to? We're going to go into the tasting. I wanted to tell you one last thing. 1960s. Now, Biondi Santi has managed to convince a lot of people to produce wine. Farmers, bigger farms, smaller farms. We get to a point when finally in 1967, the Consorzio, in 1964, the Consorzio comes together, is 12, a dozen winemakers, that believed in the project to look after this area, making Brunello, and from that day onward, the disciplinare, the DOCG, they didn't really change. 5 years, 2 years minimum of oak, but some people would use the 5 years just for the oak. Good old school winemakers, come Franco Biondisanti, il compianto Franco Biondisanti, o Soldera, qualche super old schooler would be using the big barrels for much longer than the DOCG would have required. In the region of the late 1990s, the beginning of 2000, there were a lot of new wave with the barriques. There's some people that know how to use barriques, but there's one thing about barriques, 225 liters, or the Pièce from Bourgogne, it doesn't matter, and Sangiovese. Sangiovese, unlike Cabernet Sauvignon, is a very thin-skinned variety as well. È una varietà dalla buccia sottilissima, no? Quasi come il Pinot Nero. So Cabernet Sauvignon is able just to face and contrast the presence of brand new oak. Sangiovese a little less. So Cabernet Sauvignon can face the oak, Sangiovese a little less. And that is why for many years they've been using the big oak barrel. Now, even the modernists have done a little bit of comeback into the big barrels just because they've realized that Sangiovese needs some extra time. Cominciamo, ragazzi, a servire I nostri vini. The value of land in Montalcino, since those 12 guys started to produce wine, went skyrocketing 3,000%. Today, quite easily, you can come across a hectare of Montalcino for 1.5 million euros. The price of this Fuso, of the bulk wine in Montalcino, is always high. You were talking about like 10 euros. So it's an appellation that is holding up his reputation. Why is it so famous? Why is it so famous? The first questions that I asked you all. I think it's so famous because Brunello is easy to drink when young. It's easy to drink for people that are not in the wine trade, but people that are in the wine trade can see all the nuances and complexity. It's a Mediterranean-style wine, but with aging potential. And I think that's been one of the success of Montalcino. The other one has been come posso dire, they're comrades. These winemakers are comrades. They stick together. And if you go and do petrol, if you go to a service station in Montalcino and you ask, where is Il Poggione? He'll know where to direct you to. That's also one of the secrets of appellations. It's an appellation that has grown altogether. 250 winemakers. Are they all making fantastic wines? Well, of course not, and then it depends also on your taste buds. But that's like everywhere, in every appellation. You have a massive appellation, and every year is different. 2015, what we're having today, and 2016 has been they've been having a couple of amazing vintages, because 15 has been a little bit hotter than 16, but very generous, so we'll see that in the Riserva. 2016 maybe has been a little bit more classic, so cool nights, hot days. Cominciamo. Vedo che vi hanno servito il vino numero 1. Si può vedere Londra, sanno il vino, almeno non vado avanti per conto mio, per conto nostro. Stanno servendo, ragazzi, dalla regia? Allora, cominciamo. Let's begin with one of the mothers of Montalcino. Il Poggione, the Poggione Cellar, la cantina del Poggione, è considerata una delle mamme di Montalcino. Why? Because it's been one of the first wineries, one of the biggest, one of the largest, helping also smaller winemakers to vinify when they were starting the... Eccoli là. Ah, loro ce l'hanno già tutti, erano lì in attesa. Chop, 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 like we have to hurry up because the British are already like polishing the glasses off. Bloody hell. Okay, so we're starting off from Poggione, Vigna Paganelli. So we have a wine that is, these are the oldest vineyards of Il Poggione. Where are we? We are right southwest, one of the last wineries that you can find in Montalcino. There is a terrace. Prego. There is a terrace when you go to Il Poggione at sunset, where you have the 180 degrees amphitheater of Montalcino with Montamiata over there. You can almost touch the sea. It's just like a mighty place. Franceschini family purchased this property together with Coldorcia, attenzione, cioè this was a Florentine family that in the 1800s bought this piece of land in Montalcino. Then the two brothers split, and they had one rule: do not call your winery Sant'Angelo in Colle, okay, Fattoria Sant'Angelo, but you can split. So one was Il Poggione, and the other one became, chi lo sa, l'ho detto prima, Coldorcia, okay, that in 1973 was purchased by the Conti Marone Cinzano. So as of that year, we have these two beautiful wineries producing, in this case, a Riserve, big oak vats. Il Poggione is a relatively traditional winery. Today they've become a little bit more, there is more tonneau, smaller vats. They used to have like the super gigantic elephants, barrels, and now they shrink down to the 50 and 75 hectoliters. So Southwest, 4 years. This is one of the guys that would keep the wine 4 years in the big oak barrel. On the nose this is like the nose of an austere, a bit old-fashioned Brunello with the super Sangiovese leathery notes. The saggina, la traduttrice broomstick, avevamo detto. It's about the blackberries, wild blackberries. There is some dry herbs, tobacco, cherries, like there is a lot of black fruit, not overripe black fruit. Beautiful combination of tertiary aromas and the fruit. Look at the color, guys. Very, very often when we are doing tasting, we talk about the color just to say it's ruby, it's this or that. But why are we looking at the color? Is to mainly look for the acidity and whether or not the winemaker has gone for an extractive style or just menos es más. In this case, is menos es más. Tobacco, beautiful tobacco notes, very open, friendly, with some darker notes, some leather, some forest floor. Do you know what happened? I didn't use the split bucket. This wine has got energy. Structure, austerity, sweetness without being sweet. This is like zero sugar residual. This is sweetness of maturity of the fruit. The oldest wine, 1964. What's happening is that when you put the wine on the palate, you do not have just the sweet kiss of Montalcino, but also that kind of juicy acidity, minerality, and salt bites. Okay, c'è questo cristallo salino that helps the wine to go down straight to your throat, lots of energy. Right now, I'm still having the wine. The wine is still in my palate with this gunpowder tea, lots of prunes right in the end. Come si chiama? Blood orange, very intense, very complex. This is a wine to keep. To be honest, I'm surprised that the wine is so already ready to drink. Because this is a wine that we know. I've been cracking open really old vintages of this stuff, the 60s, the 70s, and 80s, and it's always a beauty. 2015 has been a very forward vintage, and as a result, the wine is still ready now. Maybe you need some brisket or something to go with it, some meat, but it's still like a very generous Riserva. What are we doing now? So I'm just thinking how far we're going. So here, we are in Sant'Angelo in Colle, so we go southwest towards the Orcia River. If you carry on, you go to the sea. We're gonna go a little bit more westward, ancora più ad ovest, okay? Con la seconda cantina. And stay with me, because this is another universe. Vero? A completely different wine. We're going west. This is not south, it's more west. The result on the nose is way more red-driven fruit, è molto più sulla frutta rossa, way more on the floral. C'è una nota that is almost like a hibiscus, rose petals, and a tropical hint in this wine that is quite unique. It's more about the strawberry jam rather than the cherries or the prunes. And a gunflint presence. Kind of love this nose. It's more on the Pinot Noir-ish side. Leatheriness, once again, the Sangiovese always releases a little bit of wild factor. I wouldn't say farmyard, it's more about the herbs, some peppermint, some basil. Very intense nose, very generous. This nose is saying, I am a southern-driven Mediterranean wine. This is Brunello di Montalcino. It's a caress before you go to bed. It's something, but all of a sudden you have that dark element that says, wait a minute, do not go to bed. Get out and go for your aperitivo. Because the wine has got much more than you'd be thinking at the beginning. Let's try it on the palate. Very light, very red, ruby, transparent with some garnet hues right on the rim. Do you know what? Again, juice. Juice, right? This is not jammy. There is a difference between jammy and juicy. Juicy is just you chewing fruit, red fruit, pomegranate actually, blood orange. There is something that is related to the citrus that makes this wine quite intriguing, lots of acidity. You could say that there is some kind of like easiness to it, seductiveness to it, that you say like, is this a Riserva? Is this gonna go on? Because maybe it's already too nice. But this wine is conceived on the acidity versus the over Schwarzenegger structure. And to be honest, I didn't tell you what it is. This is a wine that in the past, I didn't enjoy too much because it was overdone, over-extractive, super black-driven fruit, and a little bit too modern. Gualto is the Riserva. I love this idea. I love this idea because it's reflecting much more the character of the place of Camigliano. What is Camigliano? Camigliano è un borgo. It's not even a winery. It's a village with the beautiful old tall pine trees, the cypress trees. And then you have Walter Ghezzi that in 1957 falls in, like Milanese, by the way, falls in love with Montalcino. He purchases this beautiful piece of land and he makes wine. I think in the last few years, Camigliano, they had a moment when it was a bit more on the commercial side, but now they just decided, you know what? We have one of the greatest terroirs, bits of land that human beings can afford. So let's try to show, this is my interpretation, but I think in the last 5 years, they really changed gear towards higher quality wines. Best exposure, clay, lots of fossils. If you walk in the vineyards of Camigliano, you just come across literally shells. Interesting. The camel on the label is an interesting fact because this winery was created in 948. In Caserta, south of Italy, same distance between Rome and Montalcino. Rome and Caserta is another Castello di Camigliano with a camel. And apparently the camel is a symbol of the Crusades. Okay, so there is a twin castle in Caserta, sempre nel mezzo. Filippo, tu sei sempre in mezzo. Best exposures, limestone, 36 months of oak. What kind of oak? 20 to 60 liters. Allier and Slavonia. Slavonian oak is an oak that tends to be a little bit more neutral than French or American oak. That's why it's been used in all Italian traditional winemaking, not just in Montalcino. 550 hectares estate with 94 hectares of vines. Andiamo avanti because time goes by. Vino numero 3. Here, so where are we? We started off here. We moved on opposite direction, west, and now we're going south, deep south, like the same parallel. Okay, so we're moving across from east to west, and right now we go center south with Talenti. Pierluigi, the founding, the guy that put together Talenti, is a Romagnolo. Love for life and food, and Riccardo started off taking the business. They used to be a biker, and here his cellar is like one of those romantic under the Tuscan sun stone houses with beautiful wisteria, the lovely Cinquecento that I once stole from him because I knew where the keys were to browse around Montalcino. If you want to know, I'll tell you where he hides the keys of the Cinquecento, blue with the open top. This guy works with the old school, new school approach. So some big oak cask, 50%, 24 months of aging, but at the same time, also some barrique and mainly tonneau. 7,000 bottles. These bottles, in general terms, are gonna go around the 60 euros. Now, I don't know in pounds. I've lost track with my pounds, but more or less the Riserva, unless you're shooting off with something out of the box that can be really expensive in the hundreds of thousands, these wines tend to be all around the 60 euros on the shelf. Darker, more prunes, more black cherries and the spirit. Like this wine has got a darker force, has got a more clay-driven, more leather. Old vines, 40 years old, made only in special vintages. Pian del Conte, name of the wine. Someone is not going like, I said, hot, very hot, alcoholic, strong, powerful, extractive, but yet with juice. Right now, after 20 seconds, we have, like, it's almost as if all of a sudden you enter into a caveau. Someone has realized that you walked in where you didn't head to, and is gonna shut down all the walls, because right now it's all about the tannins, and the materic presence is much more. If you were to boil this Brunello, well, you'll be crazy to begin with, but if you were to do it, you'll be left over with much more residual, like raw matter, right? Do you agree? There is so much, force that comes from the underground. I think this kind of wine has got more tar, more goudron factor, and it's a darker side wine that needs some more time. I'm sure is gonna open up, but it's like the opposite kind of like idea of what the Gualto was. A questo punto abbiamo altri 3 vini, and I'm gonna take you, vediamo dove vi porto, da Fanti, quindi diciamo from Camigliano, Talenti, we're gonna go back again onto the beginning bit, sulla via di Sant'Antimo. So once again, think about that you are in Montalcino. There you go, bellezza qua. Non so quanto si veda, ma from Montalcino, you take this Via di Sant'Antimo, is the Via Amiatina. If you carry on all the way, you're going to be into the Monte Amiata at the foothills, at the footsteps of the Monte Amiata, and crossing the beautiful Abbazia di Sant'Antimo. By the way, if you were to do that, this is travel tips. You want to go stop and eat in a beautiful spot of the world that is with a chef. His name is Marco. I'm going to give you the name of the restaurant. Have you been, anyone has ever been to Silene? A magical place. It's going to take forever to get there. From Montalcino will be an hour, and you're going to go into the middle of nowhere. The largest garden, he's got a garden, like a green garden, that is 10 times the size of his restaurant. And once you're there, his wine list is bonkers. So, beautiful place to go. Cosa abbiamo qua? Abbiamo un vino that is grown near the Abbazia di Sant'Antimo that was built by Carlo Magno. Charlemagne wanted to build this abbey because apparently Sant'Antimo made a miracle saving his soldier from the Black Death. Sant'Antimo è un'abbazia, a beautiful abbey that you're going to encounter from Montalcino, 15 minutes drive. You have vineyards and forests, and you go down, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the red clay soil, you'll find geometrically designed vineyards, olive groves, and this beautiful white abbey built with onyx stone that at sunset is going to glow inside the church. And until a few years ago, there were still the abati, adesso non ci sono più, singing the Gregorian chants that you could get goosebumps, like it was a phenomenal place to go visit. So, still south, very hot area. Fanti, in questo caso è la riserva Vigna Le Macchiarelle, and in Fanti, Filippo Baldassarre Fanti, here would only get 30 tons per hectare, okay, to make this Riserva. It's not because he wants to be, it's a bit of an extractive wine, you can tell. You know, like he does lots of green harvest. Only the best vintages. The vineyards are from the 1980s, 40 years old. Galestro, 4,000 bottles. Galestros, once again, is the schisty soil, 85 euros. It's a darker wine with some roots, cola, and more like this is, once again, is relatively similar to the third wine with this extractive goudron, black-driven fruit, dark chocolate, tobacco. Whoosh. Oh. Tannins, right? How much are we chewing here? I see someone here in the room that goes like, oh. It's like if you need some wild boar, just like you can almost like just go for the boar. You need some meat to cut through these tannins. This is a wine that was designed to be into the world of more Schwarzenegger, power, concentration, muscularity, extraction, goudron, earthiness. It's a matter of taste as well. It's played less into the menos es más. This más is más. Okay? I'm not being judgmental, but it's just like you either are a guy who likes the number 2 or the number 4. Like these are like totally opposite end of the spectrum, organolettically speaking. Muoviamoci ancora e andiamo su La Magia. I know that most of you is going to say magia is magia. If you say magia, they'll be very upset. Actually, they're not going to be upset. Is a winery that is turned organic, 15 hectares, 500 meters above the sea level. And in this case, we are moving, non lo so, guardate quanto, maybe 4 kilometers north of Fanti. So still in the Via Miatina that goes towards the Abbazia di Sant'Antimo, so same region. 40 months of aging in the tonneau, the 500 liters barrels, French Allier. The nose is actually showing a little bit of that tonneau, a bit of that oak spice, some vanilla, slightly mentally, like a little bit of, not menthol, but like menthol with it's got a thyme, and it's about the cocoa butter, earthiness. Ok, ancora una volta, qui prima o poi ci batto un roncio, ancora una volta un vino that has been designed towards just grabbing as much as you can from those skins of Sangiovese, from that terroir, right? It's all about this materia. It's very materic. The winemaker is just wanting to get as much as possible. Once again, in this case, though, this wine has got some rustic elements to it, but at the same time, there is good enough juiciness to make your wine chew fruit and digest those tannins, but it's still a wine that right now, we're getting a little bit of that material on our lips at the end, right in the front of the lips. It's getting a little bit dry, so it's a wine that wants some more time. I have still the juiciness that comes through, so there is good enough energy. I'm curious to see how this wine is going to be going. These guys have put together the winery in 1979. It's a Schwartz family. Eccolo, vedi, questo non l'avevo letto. 40 days of maceration, 45 days of maceration. You can tell that the guys like to just grab all the materia che è possibile prendere da questo vino. Stiamo arrivando in fondo perché vedo che dovevamo finire alle 5:30. Allora, last wine, numero 6, Sasso di Sole. So far, we've been spending a lot of time here, right? Talenti, Camigliano, Talenti, Poggione, La Magia, Fanti. Where are we going now? Boom. One of the northern eastmost wineries. La zona di nord-est is the area close to the Via Cassia, okay? We are going towards the Crete Senesi, clay hills. On the nose, this wine is more on the red-driven fruit, lots of cherries, lots of blackberries. Terzuoli family, beautiful Tuscan home. This is 40 euros, Sasso di Sole. They make 3,500 bottles and it's sold in the market for 40 euros. There's a little bit of floral hints, some spiciness, some sweet vanilla. Not the vanilla, the petrol vanilla, but the stick of vanilla. Three years of Slavonian oak cask aging. Right now, I'm struggling a little bit with my conversation here. What's happening is that is just feeling, mentioned this before, like when you have your cup of tea, 5 o'clock. Hey man, with our British friend, it's almost like tea time there because it's 4:22, and I used to love to have my Bob the Builder tea with all these super tannins, right? Like when you forgot your tea bag, you go for a shower, you're enjoying your shower, then you're like, oh, I've got my tea over there, and you go like that. So a little bit too much tannic structure, to be honest. This is my wine today, because this morning I had this wine and it didn't have this dryness. Io quasi quasi, ragazzi, sommelier, vi chiederei se mi portate un'altra bottiglia, perché questa è veramente, la mia è veramente too dry. Posso avere un altro goccio? Too dry, like way too dry. Comunque, sì, grazie. Wrapping up this session, and in the meanwhile, London, if you have any questions, please shoot them now. Anche voi Milano, se avete qualche domanda. In quest'ultimo vino era un po' sono un po' dubbio perché per me c'ha una trama tannica, c'è una stringenza che è eccessiva, un'asciuttezza che non mi piace per niente, non è normale. Riserva in Montalcino. Are Riservas in Montalcino the objective of the tasting? Can we talk about Riserva as a wine that has got more aging potential than your regular Brunello? To be honest, in some cases you can. But some of the greatest experiences that I had with the old Brunellos, and I'm talking about the late 50s, early 60s, late 60s, so 61, 64, 67, 81, 85. Most of my great old Brunellos, actually, most of them weren't Riservas. It's interesting about the Riserva. Sometimes I have the feeling, but this is my feeling, that winemakers, when they are exposed to something that they have to do really well, they could turn into a little bit too much ambition, and they press too much pedal to the metal, right? In the extraction, you know, the use of, above all in the good vintages like 2015. And that is my general feeling, like sometimes they get carried away, above all in the good vintages. So the Riserva was born, Reservas, most of these Reservas, to be honest, all of them are actually designed to be Riserva. They're not those Riserva that are made for the market because they didn't sell. By the way, to be honest, like in Montalcino, there's very few bottles that go unsold. Montalcino is living an incredible moment, so I don't think that is the issue. It's more of the issue of how do they conceive winemaking in Montalcino. I prefer, that's my personal taste, the transparency, juicy, salty mineral, because I believe that aging potential isn't to do just with muscles. Then I'm not suggesting, because then it's personal taste. People that love extractive, bold wines, they're still going to be loving the extractive and bold wines. But I think structure with Sangiovese, extraction is not the key to ageability. If I think about the 64 Biondi Santi, all the old stuff that I had, those are all wines played on one very important parameter, which is acidity. Some of these wines were 6.2, 6.4 grams per liter, like a white wine, okay? And today they are alive and kicking. Vediamo se il mio ultimo è cambiato un po'. Sì, cioè, avevamo beccato, era una bottiglia, non so se fosse stato un tappo, però era di quelli, il tappo in fingardo che asciuga ma non puzza. Rifacciamo, dai. No, è che a onor del vero, I mean, I do care about these guys because they give us the bottles for everything. I didn't like it was way too dry. My mouth was going like really puckering. So that's what it is. Abbiamo domande da Londra, abbiamo domande da Milano. Intanto grazie ragazzi per l'attenzione. Spero che mi abbiate capito anche in inglese. Vai.
Abbiamo una domanda da Londra. La domanda è: qual è what is the difference of the producers using small French barrique that sticking to the traditional way?
What is the difference between those that use all the new barrels? Yep. Questa è la domanda?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't like too much polarization on all the new barrel, but modernists and traditionalists, but because like there is so much more that comes into place when you produce wine. But it's true that when you use small barrels with Sangiovese, it's quite easy that Sangiovese is going to grab a lot of that oak-driven spices, and they are difficult to digest. The big oak barrel are more neutral. I'm assuming clean big oak barrel, because in the past there used to be a lot of big old barrels that weren't that clean and didn't go that well. But nowadays is a good moment. You know what's happening in Montalcino also? New generations, young girls, young boys, graduated in enology. I love this new trend, because these guys love their wines. They taste a lot of different stuff from all over the world. They're very open-minded, and they have this weird love for tradition, but they look after it in a modern way. So most of the wineries in Montalcino nowadays will be having the big oak vats as well as some barriques and some tonneaux. The super traditionalists wouldn't have a barrique even as the flower pot, of course. Domanda qua da Milano.
Volevo sapere se il Brunello di Montalcino è sempre stato così alcolico, perché ho visto che
Buona domanda.
le annate vecchie la gradazione era più bassa e secondo te che ne accettate io non
Sì.
una, per un vino come questo è meglio un'alta gradazione?
Domandona, ragazzi. For our London mates, question here is alcohol. I perceived a lot of alcohol. The gentleman here is saying, do you reckon that the old vintages had that much alcohol, and do you reckon alcohol is a good thing for Brunello? My answer is, most wines of the 60s, of the 50s, to be honest, most wines of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, beginning of the 80s, were around 12 and a half. Napa Valley wines. Judgment of Paris with the splendid Steven Spurrier. 1976. They are tasting the Napa wines of 1974 and the Bordeaux 1974. Do you know how much the alcohol content was? 12 and a half. Are those wines dead? No. Heinz Martha's Vineyard, I always give this example because I love that vineyard and I love that wine. In 1974, today is alive and kicking with 12 degrees in alcohol. And the same goes for Brunello. The 61 called Dorcia that I had recently was like 12 and a half. But the alcohol is an issue that the world is facing as a whole. Whether you are in Sicily or Alto Adige, whether you're in Burgundy or Bordeaux. Napa has gone to 16 degrees in alcohol. It's something that is happening all over for a few factors, not just for global warming, but for the fact that also people are using a totally different agricultural attitude, less production, less yields, and they're starting to understand the importance of leaves to cover from sunburn and everything, but it's better agriculture means that you have vines that work better, and as a result, you have higher alcohol, which for me, to answer your question, I don't want to go around and be politically correct. I don't think it's a good thing in general. I don't like alcohol. I mean, I do like my alcohol, but as a matter of fact, with my British mates, when I'm in London, I'm always drinking too slow for you guys, because like they think that, you know, I'm sick or something because I'm not going. Like every 3 pints in London, I drink 1. But when I'm in Italy, I drink 3 pints and my Italian mates drink 1, and so they think that I'm an alcoholic. So my pace is never a good pace. Però alcohol can help delivering more aromas and sweetness. But at the same time, there is a side effect, which is burning, making your mouth getting dry. Quindi, come dicevo prima, I don't believe that extraction and power is the key to ageability. What's your favorites? What else do you think, guys? Ditemi, shoot.
In English or Italian?
Come vuoi, as you wish. If you go English, we don't need translation.
Okay, in English. I'm not a real expert for wines, but I like very much wines.
Okay.
Okay, in any case, I've realized that there are some differences about the flower tasting.
Sì.
6 wines that we have tried. But in any case, for myself, I can say that the biggest difference that I have realized from these 6 wines is the level of astringents.
Okay.
What do you think about this, my self-perception?
Good question. I mean, we have a gentleman here in Milano that is saying, like, I'm not a wine guy. I love wines, and I realized that here, one thing that struck my mind is not just about the nose, but about the astringency. Okay, yeah, that's exactly the factor. Some wines do have a type of astringency that when you have good enough juiciness, when your palate is clean and is not, you don't stay like too dry for too long, you can actually see that the wine will get better with time. But if your palate stays dry, that is either astringency that comes from green fruit, so green tannins, or too much oak. And that kind of astringency is going to stay there forever and ever and ever. Quindi, some people love that rustic astringency. There's some wines, I mean, this is not the place to talk about, for instance, wines like an Australian wine, 19 Crimes, that has got a lot of tannins and astringency and residual sugar. Weird combination of sweetness and rustic tannins. Quindi i gusti sono personali, però that is the case. Avete qualche domanda, ragazzi? O qualche commento, scusate, perché non è solo la domanda. Lì ce ne abbiamo ancora da Londra. Forza Milano, non fatevi battere da Londra. Vai.
From London, they say that they like very much the wine number 2 and number 5.
Gli è piaciuto il numero 2, Camigliano, e il numero 5, La Magia. Come dire, from London, like the room, they made an assessment? Ok.
And then, sorry, about the question before, maybe I misunderstand. They want to know the proportion using small French barrique versus mixed versus large.
You mean as the appellation?
Yeah.
Okay. With regards to what London liked, I think Camigliano this year really hit the right spot. So I think Camigliano has produced a really seductive wine with so easy to drink and yet complex. It was a pleasure to drink it, to be honest. As a matter of fact, I didn't need to use the speed bucket. When it comes to the percentage of who's using, I somehow answered saying that the majority of wineries are coming back with a couple of things. One is the bigger barrel in the cellar. 2 is concrete. So I would say that there is more medium size, because the big barrel are 100 and 150 hectoliters. Those wineries are almost disappearing. Nobody is almost having that left. Only the big old wineries. But a lot of wineries are going for the 20 to 60 hectoliters is what you will find mostly across the board in Montalcino, together with some tonno. Milano.
Io vorrei dare un segnale assonante agli amici di Londra, perché da quello che sento anche qua il 2 e il 5 sono i più gettonati.
Anche da questo lato? Allora, so for Milano is calling London calling, but this is a Milano calling. And they're saying, guys, Milano is with you. They love the number 2 and number 5 as well. So it seems like you guys are tuned in. Abbiamo ancora domande o considerazioni, more questions or comments that you like to bring to the table? Okay. Sì, assolutamente. Good question. Mentioning food and wine. I believe that Camigliano, I'd be happy to eat it with fish. Okay? There is a lot of misconception, guys, about this thing about the meat. You know, like the boys gotta go for their steak and the baked reds. And, you know, the thing is, it's a factor connected to the body of the wine and the body of the food. I give you an example. If you go for a fish soup with some tomato base, and you want to have some wine, and you add up some rosemary, some saffron to your seafood soup, that's a little trick that all of a sudden is going to make your seafood a perfect match to your Brunello di Montalcino Riserva. I've done a gala dinner in New York at the Metropolitan Museum with a great seafood chef here, and it was all about seafood and all about the greatest reds of Italy, starting from Amarone all the way down. So it's how you handle your food. Chiaro, if you're having a light sea bass steamed with extra virgin olive oil, and you try with wine number 4, that's not gonna work, okay? Because it's too aggressive, too much, too raw matter. Those kind of wines need meat. Proteins break down tannins. So when you have, if you don't eat meat, you can have a lovely Parmigiana with some like a hard smoked cheese on top, but you need something strong. Però I vini che hanno un carattere, wines that have got this gentle character, I actually love them a lot with seafood. And of course, poultry. You could go for guinea fowl, una bella faraona, perfetto, no? Con questo tipo di vino. Lo so che sto andando sempre sulla carne, ma insomma, if you're gonna go vegetarian, you need some fat, you need some proteins of some sort to break down some of these tannins. Ci vuole un po' di proteina per rompere il tannino, soprattutto dei vini più estrattivi. Cheese is always, Romans used to sell wine with cheese. They knew exactly what to do, because when you have tannins, you give a piece of cheese, all of a sudden the wine becomes smooth, round, and mellow. So you go back home and you go like, and you've been, so that's a brilliant combination, of course. Like dry cheese, not soft cheese, this is not gonna work. No ricotta, no mozzarella. You have to start going with the Parmigiano, like 24 months, okay, 18 months and onward. I wouldn't go for any blue cheese because you're gonna mess things up.
Since we are in Tuscany, which one you would recommend? Which is the best one for Fiorentina steak?
Okay, la bistecca alla Fiorentina, we're talking about T-bone steak that actually was invented because of the British. Henry VIII used to have lots of affairs in Florence. And the soldiers, the British soldiers that were going during bonfire night in Mercato Centrale, they were asking for beef steak, bistecca. And the British used to eat their meat, just cut it sideways across the spine. And so that's the length between, and that's how the bistecca alla Fiorentina was born. But there is one thing about bistecca alla Fiorentina. People think like a big steak, I need like a big wine. You don't cook bistecca alla Fiorentina too much. The rule is, of course, you know, people, the chefs, they say anything smaller than this is carpaccio, okay? And you usually cook these like 5 to 7 minutes on one side, 5 to 7 minutes on the other side, and then you just heat it up on the bone. So basically, you're eating raw meat. So 2 big wines are not actually good for bistecca. So in this case, I'd rather go for something lighter than bigger. In terms of matching food and wine, stews, quindi un peposo, okay? Something that you cook for a longer period of time would be better for bigger, okay? Quindi wines with a lot of tannins, like a slow, long cooked meat, like il manzetto all'olio bresciano anche, potrebbe andare, visto che siamo qui vicini. Chiuso. Londra. Grazie ragazzi. Thank you. Thank you, grazie Milano, grazie Londra. Thank you guys. Take care.